Brought to you by Fino Tequila.
Hello, everyone. This is JoJo from Chicago, and thank you so much for tuning in. This is Fino's Tequila's first podcast episode, and I'm so excited to be here with all you guys and my beautiful guest. Jenna, tell us a little bit about Fino Tequila and what it's all about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jojo. Well, Fino Tequila is a 100% women-owned brand. We started in Chicago April of last year. We are now in 5 different states, including Illinois, DC, Maryland, and Tennessee, and Florida. Ooh. So we're very excited, yes. And we're starting this series with Toy Hutchinson.
Yeah, so we have our first guest ever, which is a banger, Toy Hutchinson. So thank you so much for coming in.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and for a week ago, it was just announced you resigned for senior senator.
I resigned as senator so that I could come join the administration.
Yeah, so now you are senior advisor for JB Governor of the Cannabis Control.
That's right.
That's crazy. Congratulations.
Couldn't have told me 10 years ago that this was going to be my job in 2019. So yeah,
know.
It's good.
Honestly, it's probably everyone's dream job to be the cannabis queen, to be like, all right, we're going to really settle this.
It is one of those things where I think my kids think that I'm the coolest mom you could possibly have.
Of course.
Till they realize it was not really about them getting it easier.
No.
So we had to work on that.
On the contrary, it's going to be a lot harder.
It's going to be harder for you to get it, but I'm still cool but I'm still cool.
Okay. All right, that's cool. But yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you get started on this bill? Because this is one of the most important bills in Illinois. So,
well, we're really excited. We're excited for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
Illinois is the 11th state to do this. And so it's not the first state, it's the 11th state. So, but we did it differently. And I think the most important thing people need to understand is that the other 10 states did it by ballot initiative. Mm-hmm. So the ballot, they get it on the ballot, everybody votes, and they say, do you want to tax and regulate this like alcohol? That is, most people say yes.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily know how to do that. And then all of a sudden the state is in the position where they got to draft rules really quick and then give licenses, and then it's just wide open. Yeah. And so what we did it through the legislative process, which is very, very different. Yeah. And it's different because it's a lot more deliberative. Mm-hmm. So we studied the other 10 states. We were like, what'd they do right? What'd they do wrong? What do they wish they could have done? We interviewed and traveled extensively. So this is really where we are today when we lead up to January 1. Which by the way, end of prohibition in the state of Illinois.
That's
amazing. It is amazing.
By the way, salute to that.
Toast.
For real.
Toast.
Cheers.
January 1 is the end of prohibition. And what I want people to understand more than anything else is that this is like a 4-year labor of love for a whole lot of people to get to this point. But that even though January 1 is like the end of prohibition, it's just the beginning of legalization. Right. And that requires a whole lot more work, especially the way we've decided to do it.
Yeah, so what we kind of talked about, off cast or off camera, I was like, so for January 1st, does that mean I could actually just start buying weed? No.
Well, it does, sort of. It does. Like if you're over 21. So if you're over the age of 21, you can buy legal cannabis for the first time in Illinois. And we'll have multiple sites that are open across the state. Mm-hmm. We do think it's going to be like the majority of states, that in the beginning there's so much anticipation that there's going to be lines. There are going to be hiccups in this, and we know this.
Yeah.
But that's largely because we did this phased in. This is a very slow, deliberative rollout.
You guys were really
because
well
our
prepared.
number one issue is building equity into the industry. Mm-hmm. So this is really about taking the 5 years of the medical program we've had, taking this 6-month turn, so that we can start to diversify the industry. And that is tying a direct nexus to people who've been disproportionately impacted in the failed war on drugs. So really what this effort is to say that you can't normalize and legalize this thing and give people a license to make millions of dollars doing the exact same thing that destroyed whole communities. Yeah. So that's what's special about this effort. It's what's different about this effort. It is very different from any of the states that went before us, and we are praying that we're going to be a model for the states that come after us.
Right, yeah, no, again, that's amazing. You said that there are going to be hiccups. Mm-hmm. There are going to be some caution areas that you guys want to make sure to kind of keep away what Colorado hiccups are, which younger people are going to be, wanting to get in on this or buying marijuana.
Well, the crazy thing about this is that what the data actually shows is that usage rate stays the same amongst young people You know the fastest growing people who do this? 35 to 55. They're the ones who like move from not really admitting it to going into some legal regulated market. And that's the most important thing. So there are 4 women who did this, and then we added a 5th amazing sister named Representative Selena Villanueva, who joined Kelly Cassidy and Heather Staines and me and Jahan Gordon Booth from around the state. And we had this like diverse group of women, and people started calling us the marijuana moms. Which was really cute. It was cute. It was actually really cute. Like this is, but it was because we were all parents.
Yeah.
And so we looked at this from a public health issue. We looked at a public safety issue.
And as a mom.
And it was like, look, number one, let's not all clutch our pearls and act like this is not happening.
True.
Let's not all behave like there aren't kids now who have easier access to cannabis than they do alcohol and tobacco.
Yeah.
So every time anybody was like, are you going to keep this away from the schools? I'm like, yes, the only way to do that is to get the government involved, because right now it's right next to the schools.
Right, yeah.
So anybody that doesn't want us to legalize, anybody that doesn't want us to be, like that this is all of a sudden gonna, like the sky's gonna fall for some reason, that would be protecting the status quo. And the status quo right now isn't safe for anybody. It's not helpful to anybody, it's not safe for anybody. There's no neighborhood drug dealer asking your kid for an ID. So at this point, any public health concern, any public safety concern, any criminal justice concern that you can think of tells us that this is a reason that the government has to get involved. And we need to legalize, and we need to regulate, and we need to make the community safe.
Yeah.
So when did this idea even come about? Like when did the 4 women say, you know what, we need to do this?
So
Like,
it started, right, and it was organic the way women typically are. It's like normally when you have a bill in the session, you are the master of your own bill.
Right.
It can't move until you say it's going to move. You are the master of your own bill. And these 2 ladies, Kelly Cassidy and Heather Staines, came to both me and Jahan and said, we know that we're going to have to pull in as many caucuses as possible, but specifically the caucuses that have been hurt the most by this, the people who represent communities across this state who were over-targeted and over-policed. Like they had a criminal justice and a social equity lens from the beginning. When people look back on this, and you ask, when you had an opportunity to do something, to change something, what'd you do? This is what we did, and it's an incredible opportunity. It's powerful, it's impactful, and every time I get to hear a story from any individual person about what this means to them, and not just whether or not people are going to make a whole bunch of money. I mean, what it means, because we looked at equity in a whole bunch of different buckets, and that's another thing that's really special about what's happening here.
So we kind of talked about how Colorado does only, like, let's say if they make money from marijuana, it's going to go straight to schools and only schools.
Only school construction, right.
So let's talk about what Illinois is going to do differently, and not just money's going to go straight into school. No, where else is it going to go?
And I wish that more people talked about it.
Yeah.
25% of the proceeds, point of sale, for as long as this is sold in the state, is going to be reinvested back into the same communities that were hit the hardest by the war on drugs. So we're talking mental health and substance abuse and or substance abuse, addiction counseling, job training, technical assistance for nonprofits so that they can receive money from the state. Those communities that were hit the hardest have all the same issues that you would expect when there's disinvestment and there's a lack of hope and people don't believe that, there's a shot for them to do anything. So we didn't just look at who's going to be able to get the licenses and when and how, because that's important too. Ownership, ownership and diversification of the industry is critically important. Sure. But we also then said, you know what else is? What are we going to do with the money?
Yeah. Where are we going to put this?
Where are we going to put the money? How are we going to reinvest and renew and recommit to neighborhoods that have been disinvested in and have had resources streamed out of it? And then the third part was, we got hundreds of thousands of people who are living every day with all of the impacts of what prohibition was. Excessive fines, misdemeanors, felony convictions, which means you can't sign a lease, you can't get a job, you can't get a student loan. And when you think about legalizing and normalizing this without talking about that is fundamentally unfair. So we built all of that into this 610-page bill. So that we could say, so that we could say that if there's any way to move this forward across this country and be a model, then we had to be comprehensive about it. And it's hard. And it's hard for people to kind of wrap their arms around, especially if you didn't spend all that time. I mean, like behind the scenes, closed doors, quietly, we've been researching and, like I said, traveling and debating and being challenged and having to defend our positions and all of those things for years. That now on January 1, when we say this is the end of prohibition, this is the beginning of what it is that we could possibly do here and teach other people to do too.
That's incredible.
So I don't, sometimes it's hard to talk about without
being emotional
being
about
really
it.
emotional about it.
I'm really holding back. I don't know if you see my eyes from a glimpse. I'm like,
it's something. It is really something. Because you get, just the other day, I was like, I sent you this message because I met a woman in the store who, in the course of conversation, I told her what it is I do. And it's not like, it's one thing to just when you're out and about and you go, so I'm the cannabis czar. Like that's what I do. That's my job. and the jokes write themselves. Like people will, it's funny. It's funny and it's cool and it's all those things. But she first asked me, what does that mean if you got in trouble?
For you specifically.
She said if this is going to be legalized, what does it mean for people who got in trouble before it was legal?
Yeah.
And I said to her, well, one of the key components is that if you have a conviction for 0 to 30 grams, this is an automatic expungement.
That's going to be a huge
game
changer
automatic
for
expungement.
Chicago.
And so she looked at me and started to cry.
Yeah.
And so now I'm standing here, I'm like, you hope as a policymaker that you get to come into contact with somebody that it's impactful to. Mm-hmm. And she said, my son has 3 felony convictions right now. And that means, there's prison time there because of that very first one. And the very first one was a cannabis one. And he was young and they charged him as an adult and he, is now in this situation. And I said, well, if it's just a cannabis conviction and it was below 0 to 30, that one is about to go away. So you need to call your lawyer because I can't, I can't give you legal advice, but you need to call your lawyer as soon as possible because that one's about to go away. And all I could do was hug her and she hugged me back. And she had tears in her eyes, and I had tears in my eyes, and I went back into the car, sat there, and had to cry for a minute. This is so much bigger.
You're changing a lot of people's lives, a lot of
so much bigger than people realize, because it's been so long. Yeah. It's been 80 years of this.
Yeah.
Do you have a data point on how many people that are going to be affected or going to be benefited out of this?
Yeah.
So on the criminal justice reform part, we are looking to expunge and or seal 770,000 cannabis records. Mm-hmm. That is the largest criminal justice reform bill in the country. Mm-hmm. Nobody has ever attempted that much. I just heard a state announce that they were going to clear 40,000.
That's crazy.
And that's wonderful if we clear 40,000.
Yeah.
But 770,000 convictions, records, translates to hundreds of thousands of people. And unfortunately, in this state, almost 50% of them are in Cook County. So we worked very closely with Kim Fox. She helped us draft that part. Everybody that came to this, said like, this is something that has to go with this. You cannot have one you can't legalize without looking at that. Right. And then when on the day that it passed, we kept saying, 1, I can't believe we're here.
Yeah.
And 2, we hope this catches on, because this country is shamefully a leader in the egregious ways we handle drug policy. And when you know better, you're supposed to do better. And since this is an industry that's growing and changing and emerging across this continent, across the world, then we have to go back and make some of these wrongs right again. Right. I mean, we have to.
So let's say if someone has been convicted of like a marijuana charge, 30 grams or less, how are people gonna know? Let's say...
that's a notification thing. Yeah, because this is really happening where it's automatic. Like, because
I know a lot of people that don't have access to, internet or anything like that.
And are worried about trying to go find a lawyer to do this. Because there are expungible things that people don't take advantage of the process for, because it's very difficult to go through dealing with that without knowing how to do it and without having access to counsel and all those things. So we built in funds for organizations like the Cabrini Green Legal Aid, where they will travel and help people access the process. We wanted to make it as close to automatic as possible, so there's very little anybody had to do. And that's the thing that I think is significant, because this is now after the enactment of this law, when this law goes live, and you get caught, it's still illegal to have, more than 30 grams. But personally, that's how much you can possess without being in trouble.
So keep it 28,
over the
you guys.
age 21,
Don't go 30.
over the age of 21, use responsibly.
Yes, you guys, you hear it, you heard it here. So be responsible, be safe, and going back to, Colorado it's been in the process. It's doing amazing with revenue and tax returns and everything like that. Everyone in Colorado is doing phenomenal with being, legal marijuana. Can you kind of go with the process of, I got a friend, right? He really
and
wants...
asking for a friend, yeah.
I'm asking for a friend. It's a friend of mine, where I won't share his name. He really wants to open up a shop. What can he do to get the process going? Because there's a lot of people out there that want to start their own business.
So one of the things that we did was, there were a couple different things. So we've had a medical industry here for 5 years.
Yeah.
And they've been pretty well regulated. No seepage, no leakage into other states. It's like we were really a gold standard in Illinois about how we regulated. The problem was, though, that it is a very homogenous industry, that it was all white and all male. And so again, when we looked at we can't turn this industry around without creating space for social equity applicants to come online. So we have this transition period. This first 6 months is really a transition. So they'll be the existing medical operators will be the first ones that actually get to start to operate on the adult use space. And that's because they already run the dispensaries. They have the product, and we have a population of people who are already accustomed to going into a safe, legally regulated space. That's the first group of people to kind of move in. Right. So we built in patient protections too, so that while we're moving to adult use, that if you rely on this for your medicine, that if you are dealing with significant pain or you have a terminal illness or you are really managing really serious stuff and this is your medicine, that we wanted to protect patients first, because those are the population of people that have had access up until this point. Applications open on Tuesday, the 10th, for our first round of social equity applicants. And that's built on...
I'm sorry, you said when?
On Tuesday, December 10th.
December 10th.
Wow.
December 10th. And so our first, so that's the first round of 75 dispensary licenses that are for social equity applicants.
And there's a limit, right?
A limit of 75. 75 licenses.
Okay.
So that is done on purpose. Because we have got to be able to, we've got to figure out whether or not all the things that we put into the law worked. So we added multiple on-ramps. It's not just about dispensaries and cultivation centers now. There's also transport and security and infusers. So somebody just makes really good brownies and you just want the brownies on the shelf someplace. Right. You don't necessarily have to have a commercial kitchen, but you can get a product to market that way. Right. So we wanted more on-ramps for people because we knew the biggest barrier when you really study this is access to capital. And the ability to pull together all this. Now, this is still an expensive proposition because it's a highly regulated industry that's half illegal. It's still illegal at the federal level. So it's still illegal at the federal level. So states, what we found was that they didn't take any effort to build in incentive. They didn't take any effort to build in a way to attract people who aren't just the regular, people. Meaning, if you're not rich and wealthy and you can't go to a bank because this is still illegal on the federal level, it's very difficult to get traditional tools for financing.
Oh, trust me,
So what we did was we took the licensure from the original operators that have the benefit of this 6 months at first, and those license fees go into a revolving loan program so that we can seed social equity applicants. So when I say seed to sale, we thought about this from seed to sale. Not only who had access to come in, but what we would do with the money, and then how we would handle, the harmful effects. So what the first thing anybody should do is go to the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations and download the application. And these are for new equity applicant, new dispensary licenses. There will only be 75, and that is so that we can keep the market small enough to study.
And to control and to kind of see and observe and not just have it like a wildfire and be like...
And then it's all gone and then there's no market share for when equity applicants come on board.
Right, of course.
So you have states like Colorado, California, Oregon, and they have like one dispensary for every 9,000 people, one dispensary for every 10,000 people. We're only going to have one dispensary for every like 400,000 people. So this is a phased in thing so that we can grow it. That's why we say over and over and over again that January 1 is the beginning of what legalization looks like. It's the beginning of us being able to get other folks into the market.
Right.
And it's the beginning of us being able to say that everything we added into this to attract new people to this industry worked, or we put a lid on it and there's not another license going out until we figure out how to make course corrections. This is on purpose, by design, because you can't turn an entire industry like this around in one day.
You guys did it really smart. You guys were like, we need 75. We need to watch this. We got to be responsible moms. We got to be the queen bee moms to kind of watch it.
I know, and isn't it just like a mom? Like, no, you can't have it all right now.
Exactly. You can have one little piece of donut.
Like after you clean your room, then you can have this. But no, you can't have it all right now.
Can't have it all.
This is going to be deliberative and thoughtful and slow rollout, so that by the time those equity applicants come on board, they got a fighting shot with some market share to compete in. And we're not giving any more licenses until we demonstrate that either happened or it didn't happen.
How do you get started in raising that capital?
So it is difficult to raise capital, and it is difficult to raise capital because you cannot go to a traditional bank. So a lot of people are using like their personal savings, or they're pulling together groups of people who have access to capital. There's no bank that's going to give you a loan to start a cannabis business because this is illegal at the federal level. So even having said that, there are a lot of people who are pulling together investors and going through this application process that is tied towards increasing the different kinds of folks that can come in. So we drew a direct nexus to people who are disproportionately impacted on the war of drugs. That means if you live in a community that has the maps were done by high arrest records, high rates of returning citizens coming back from incarceration, the SNAP level of benefits, poverty rates, and all of those criteria. And if you or your family or somebody has been personally impacted, so it doesn't necessarily have to be you individually, but maybe your son or daughter or sister or brother in your immediate family has been impacted. This is designed to have people who were really locked out and left behind have a shot to go in. Now, once that happens, once you go through this license process, and that is again at the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations, IDFPR, and that's where you can get the application process. Once you turn that in, that deadline is January 2nd. If you are identified as a social equity applicant, then you will have the ability to apply for these revolving loan things. We've got $30 million set to the side to be able to help people raise that capital for their initial business costs and for how they get their businesses up and running. Right. And that loan should replenish itself as this program grows. But the goal really is to make sure that people who don't know a couple millionaires, just they can't pick up their phone and be like, hey, you got $1 million, you want me to do that? Like, do you know somebody most of us don't traffic in places where we just average friends like that.
Trust me, yeah.
So this is and if you're one of those applicants too, the fees to get involved in the first place are half what the normal fees are. So we reduce fees for the application process. We created a revolving loan process, and then we take the point of sale to reinvest it back in those same communities. This is game changing, and it's gonna start on January 1 when we see those applications for these applicants starting. The deadline for that on January 2nd, and then we're gonna over the course of this year hopefully see new entrants into this industry that no other state has figured out how to get. So that's where we are.
That's nuts.
And that is it's
essentially a game changer.
We pray that it is.
People are not going to be in a loan and get stuck. It's like you
pray
guys.
That it is.
Yeah. So you guys
and
are
that doesn't
revolving.
mean that and that doesn't mean that we're not going to figure out. This takes a lot of study, and we're going to learn as we move forward. Like once people get into the industry, what are the barriers they face once they actually get started? We're committed to studying this from the very first day to the very last day to make sure that what we did worked, or to stop and make course corrections, because that's the other thing about equity. If you're really serious about it, you got to play the long game. You got to play the long game. So if anybody were to ask me when I had an opportunity to do something to change it, I'm saying we got in there, we're doing the work, and we're going to play the long game. This ain't over. This is just the beginning.
Now, last question. I kind of want to see, what are you going to hope in 5 years? What do you want to see this whole after January 1st? What is your goal? What's the dream idea?
The dream idea is that we changed whole communities. That I'm looking at an industry that's not homogenous, that's not all white. That I see a rainbow complexity of folks that are involved in changing the way this industry looks as we move forward. I hope in 5 years that there'll be people talking about the fact that they can sign a lease, they can get a job, they can rebuild their lives, that's not, anytime you do that for one individual, you're essentially doing that for every person or all the people that one individual touches, their families, their blocks, their communities. So I'm hoping in 5 years that for all the worry about this, that Illinois is the gold standard and the model, and we will have taught multiple states to do what we did afterwards. Because again, we're not the first state to do this. We're the 11th state to do this, but we're the only state that's doing it differently.
You're really rebranding Illinois, essentially.
I'm
Giving it a
hoping.
better
We're
look.
hoping.
Because Colorado, you think of Colorado, and you're like, oh, it's a cool state. Illinois, you're like, oh, it's a little tough on taxes. But now, the queen of cannabis is hoping to turn that around and make it a cool state.
We really, and if there's let's aim high.
Yeah. I'm very proud to be a Chicagoan, for sure.
Thank you so much for doing this for us. The whole idea of the podcast series started, I don't know if you guys watched our initial introductory video that Sonali and I did, and we talked a lot about the philosophy of the company, our branding, and as you know, Fino, the word FINO is an acronym for
Failure is not an option.
Yes, thank you.
Hey,
So for
she
somebody,
already knows. Oh
It's
my
because that's
God.
why I love it. This is the thing. That's how we met. That's how we met. And seriously, it's one of those. It's it's so inspiring.
Yes.
Because I know that there are some out there, but this was the first time I had ever been gotten to know a tequila brand, a liquor brand that was 100% women owned. It was, and so in the midst of this, and then we had these women working on this massive sea change of policy. It was just incredible, and so it resonated with me on a lot of different levels. Just because I know that being women in this space, there are a lot of people who will expect you to fail.
Absolutely.
Expect you to. But guess what? Not an option.
Yes. But what is failure? Is it not be able to do what you want to do? Because I'm sure in your role, you would have faced challenges. So my question to you is, how did you address it? When did you come to a point where you say, you know what, failure is not an option for me. I'm going to get this done.
It's funny that you say that, because I would think about my elders who would tell me that you learn so much more when you fail than when you succeed. I mean, there's so many times so you have to look at failure differently anyway, that it's a necessary thing. It's nothing to be afraid of, which is why I don't think about it in that term. If something doesn't work, it's not a failure to me. It's a learning experience for me. So it's another reason why it's not an option, because it's what makes you better. It's what, pushes you forward. And then the other part of it is, if you really think about it, that means that it's not important what happens when it doesn't work. It's what's important is what you do next. So sitting in failure, reveling in failure, doesn't do anything to get you to that next point of success. You're still on this journey. So for me, there were challenges, there were debates, there were times we thought the bill was going to fail. There were times when I had no idea what was going to happen next, but we knew that this was going to be so important to so many different people that we could not accept anything less than winning on this. And we knew it was going to be the long game. Mm-hmm. And the thing that got me more than anything was that when the governor asked me to leave the legislature, which meant unravel my life, to come be on the implementation side of this, he told me two things, and he didn't talk about money. He never talked about money. Governor Pritzker asked me, he said, if we don't get the social justice right, and we don't get the criminal justice reform right, then we will have failed. And we are not going to fail. And so it was the thing that convinced me we got work to do.
Fino moment, guys.
Fino moment.
Salud, salud.
Salud. Oh, drink. You can't toast that.
Yes.
It's okay.
It's good. It's good. So that's my moment.
That's beautiful.
Fabulous. So let's end on a lighter note.
All right.
We call it the high five.
The high five.
Talking to
No
a
pun
marijuana
intended.
mom.
No pun intended.
I know, right? So really quick, just quick questions, for both of you guys, actually. So really
I'll let Toy lead this.
okay.
Just remember.
I'll let Tori he's got this. All right, so cold brew coffee or pumpkin spice latte?
Cold brew coffee.
Nice. Flip flops or barefoot?
Barefoot.
Nice. Twitter or Instagram?
Insta.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Nice. Favorite color?
Pink.
Why?
Sorority.
I thought it'd be green. I was waiting for
My
green.
sisterhood. I know I should have said green, but you know what? My sorority colors are pink and green. So just for anyone out there who's watching what that would be. But yes, anytime I'm in a space like this and I wear green, it's the number one thing people say. They're like, is that your favorite color? Because it is. Of course it is.
I mean, I just got the eyes. That's all right. I'll plug it in there too.
New green industry. It's a new green industry.
Right? Least favorite vegetable?
Least favorite, lima beans.
What?
Lima beans.
Oh, lima beans. I'm sorry. I haven't heard that since
I
like
know,
third grade.
because when I was a
lima
kid,
greens.
when I was a kid, that's why I don't
I was
eat
like-
them. Lima beans. I don't eat. When I was a kid, that was like eat them or I'd fall asleep at the table. Like you can't make me eat those.
That's great. Mine's just still broccoli. I mean, like lightly steamed. Still like it. It's all right. It's all
You're
right.
not least favorite, right?
Least favorite, yeah. I mean, it's all right. Now it's steamed, but Malort or tequila?
Tequila.
Do you know Malort, by the way?
Yes, but tequila.
All right, good.
Tequila,
Good. You guys heard it now.
That's right.
It's not Malort. It's tequila.
And matter of fact, it's Fino tequila.
Chew that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We'll hopefully be doing this every week. We'll have different guests on. Follow us either on Instagram or Facebook at Fino Tequila, or if you want to find our bottles or go into your favorite bars, check out our website, www.finotequila.com. Love you guys. Thank you so much, Toy.
Take care. Yay.